Come on, get up. Get to your feet. I'm not gonna punch a man who's just lying there. You're going back to jail. They're gonna stick you in a cell so buried, it'll come with a tombstone. Today on the Comic Book Report, the Symbiote Spider-Man Omnibus by Peter David and Greg Land from Marvel Comics. Stick around and check it out. Greetings webheads, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're back in the world of Marvel Comics doing yet another Spider-Man Omnibus review. And that's right, we're taking a look at the recently released Symbiote Spider-Man Omnibus. This collects a handful of pretty modern miniseries from Marvel Comics, and I can't wait to talk about it today. Before we dive into today's review though, as always, I would like to shout out the channel sponsor, Panelbound Comics. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, as always, I encourage you to check them out. You can find a link to them in the video description, and if you see anything on their site you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's one of the best ways to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Spider-Man Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The comics in this volume were written by Peter David, with art from Greg Land and Roge Antonio. The issues in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2019. The volume itself collects Symbiote Spider-Man issues 1 through 5, Absolute Carnage Symbiote Spider-Man, Symbiote Spider-Man Alien Reality issues 1 through 5, Symbiote Spider-Man King in Black issues 1 through 5, Symbiote Spider-Man Crossroads issues 1 through 5, and finally Symbiote Spider-Man 2099 issues 1 through 5. Now this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 632 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the Symbiote Spider-Man Omnibus, and right from the top, I'll just say that this is the standard edition cover available for this release. There is a direct market cover as well. I'll go ahead and throw up a quick thumbnail of that, just so you can compare the two options for the covers here. I like both quite a bit, but this standard really just steals my heart. Really love it. I just think it's striking. Love the pops of color. Now, the only difference between the standard edition and the direct market covers are, of course, the front of the dust jacket and the image on the bottom of the spine. Now, looking at that spine design for this omnibus, we do have the Marvel Omnibus logo, of course. Then we have Symbiote Spider-Man with that fun stylized font and a picture of the aforementioned Spider-Man there beneath the list of creators. We also have some miscellaneous webwork designs on the spine. Overall, I do like how this looks. Now, as we get to the back of the dust jacket, I have to admit, this is the one area of the dust jacket I'm not overly fond of. We have that same kind of webbed, stylized design we saw on the spine, and we have written in the webs back in black. Then we have a blurb about the collection, what it collects, logo, pricing information, age rating, all of those things. Pretty standard fare back here, but I would have loved to see some more art from this collection. I actually thought the art from this book was pretty terrific, and I'm surprised we didn't get any here on the back. Okay, and now as I like to do with these omnibus reviews, I did want to go ahead and spend one more minute on the exteriors. This time I will take off that dust jacket so we can look at the interior flaps, as well as seeing it all at a glance before I transition to the hardback book itself. So as I said, for this design work here, the interior flaps, we have some more about the creators and about the Symbiote Spider-Man sequence of miniseries. We're also gifted with some bonus artwork of Symbiote Spider-Man, which I did like to see. Overall, we don't really have any wrap around imaging here. Like I said, we have the kind of web motif on the spine and back cover. But as we transition to the hardback book itself, we do have some art on board. We have the Symbiote Spider-Man kind of coming out, fighting almost. We have kind of an upper half version of him. We don't have his full body. Along the spine, we basically have a reprint of all the information on the dust jacket spine, and on the back of the hardback book, we have the exact image from the front of the hardback book, just mirrored. An interesting choice here. I would have loved maybe a wraparound or more art, but I still think that this is pretty fun. And now that we've finished up our look at the exteriors, I did want to go ahead and spend one moment examining this omnibus's binding. So as I mentioned, it is a sewn binding. My copy here has a little bit of an eye. I would say overall the pages laid down fairly okay. Maybe a little bit of gutter loss, but honestly nothing too critical to my reading. But of course you'll be able to gauge for yourself as I flip through the book in a moment. Okay, and with that we can go ahead and jump into the book proper. After some plain end pages, we do have a nice title page, followed by a cool creator breakdown page, publication information, and then after that we do have a 2-page introductory essay from Ralph Macchio, not the Karate Kid, the Marvel editor, but yeah, this was nice to see some written work kind of teeing off the collection. After that we jump into the first issue of Symbiote Spider-Man, and they actually even give us a little bit of a paragraph that establishes the context of the story we're about to read. Now, on this channel before, I did review this first Symbiote Spider-Man miniseries once upon a time. If I remember, I will link the video to this one in case you're curious about my review of that paperback collection, but I was happy to see those issues again. I actually decided to go ahead and reread them for the sake of this omnibus, and I really enjoyed it even a second time. But perhaps I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let me go ahead and set the stage for today's omnibus collection. So what is Symbiote Spider-Man? Basically, this is a collection of miniseries by Peter David and predominantly Greg Land. There are a couple other artists that trickle in, but mostly Peter David and Greg Land. But again, Peter David is really the draw for me here. Of course, the late and great. I was really interested when he first started publishing these miniseries or the issues back in 2019, and instead of an ongoing series, Marvel broke it up into a bunch of these 5-issue miniseries, and they're all collected here in one singular oversized hardcover volume, and I think that that's honestly really great, really a fun idea to collect all of these together. And at under 700 pages, this is a light and fairly breezy read. So what can you expect from Symbiote Spider-Man? Essentially, you can expect Peter Parker, Spider-Man in the symbiote costume. What I like about these miniseries, for the most part, they are set back in the era when Peter Parker was first wearing this suit, but before he realized it was sentient and malevolent, and long before it went ahead and grafted itself to Eddie Brock to become Venom. So we have a very defined place and time within the Marvel Universe. Because of that, we have a lot of cool kind of throwback relational pieces with where he was with his colleagues, his superheroes, his romantic entanglements. At this time, he was dating Felicia Hardy's Black Cat, so we see a lot of appearances from her in this omnibus. So if that's a character you're fond of, it's definitely a good omnibus for that. We also get to see kind of the growing menace of this black suit, even if Peter Parker is unaware. You're kind of led to believe that these are kind of the forgotten chapters that Peter Parker was just not aware of. In many cases in this omnibus, you have moments where he gets knocked unconscious, or he's asleep, or something happens and the suit takes over without his knowledge or awareness. And we have characters in his life that actually seem to glean that there might be something going on here. Characters like Black Cat or Stephen Strange, who apparently are keeping the secret from him. You get to see the growing villainy of this suit, and you get to see Peter Parker's Spider-Man becoming a bit more aggressive at times throughout this Omni. What I also kind of like about this omnibus is that because it collects these mini-series, while it is done in order and in the most logical order possible, you don't necessarily have to read them in the suggested order, I would say, for the most part. Every so often you have, callbacks to previous issues in the mini-series, but again, you have these kind of self-contained story arcs, and I really liked that. We also even have some notes that go back to original issues of this period, which I liked. And everything here, like I said, is a 5-issue miniseries with the exception of that Absolute Carnage tie-in, which if you don't know, Absolute Carnage was an event that was done around the era of Ryan Stegman and Donny Cates' Venom run. This was a Carnage-based event where essentially Carnage was coming back and he was trying to basically kill and absorb the parts of the symbiotes that were imprinted on anyone who had ever hosted a symbiote. Because of that, there was actually an issue back in the, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s, where this one passerby happened to get the Venom symbiote for a moment, walked across a couple streets, and then the symbiote left him, presumably to try to find Peter Parker again. Well, we follow up with that gentleman in present day. His life is in shambles, and you basically get to trace his life from that moment to the end in this Absolute Carnage one-shot. This was a really fun addition, and particularly if you were a fan of Absolute Carnage or that Venom run by Donny Cates, this was a really cool tie-in and addition that I think rounded out and gave you a better context. Do you need that for the miniseries to enjoy it, or for any of these Symbiote Spider-Man miniseries? No, you really don't, but I love that they included it in here. I think it was such a fun addition. But beyond that, like I said, we have these 5 or 6 miniseries, and I really dug it. Story-wise, for the first one, we basically have a Spider-Man versus Mysterio story. We follow Mysterio and we get to see his life kind of unravel. We basically see him questioning himself if he wants to continue to pursue costume villainy, and he goes to try to rob a bank, and in a kind of crossfire situation, an innocent woman is killed. He is grief-stricken and is considered leaving this whole life of crime behind when Spider-Man confronts him, and it ends up being a horribly gruesome brawl. The symbiote suit is making Peter Parker more aggressive, and ultimately Mysterio double downs on the villainy, and he is after Spider-Man. He also suspects something is going on with his costume, so he's trying to get a sample. He teams up with an old colleague who is working for the Kingpin, and things get bigger and more out of hand. We have the Black Cat here being his leading lady, but we have her kind of in this weird zone where we know that she got her powers from the Kingpin. Spider-Man doesn't know it. Mysterio tries to blackmail her to get a sample of the costume, which she is able to get. Mysterio gets infected with this portion of the symbiote and becomes even more powerful. In fact, he fights the Kingpin. Everything boils down to this really cool last battle between Spider-Man and Mysterio, where Spider-Man, again, for part of it, is just not even conscious. It's really intense, pretty tragic, and honestly a great Mysterio story. After that, we go over, I think after the one-shot, or the one-shot's after the next one, I'm not really sure, but we go over to Spider-Man Alien Reality, Symbiote Spider-Man Alien Reality. This is the Spider-Man versus Hobgoblin miniseries, but there's a whole lot more to it than just that. In fact, this miniseries has to do with kind of a parallel universe that is created when Hobgoblin gets a hold of an artifact and is able to alter reality to basically become, if not the Sorcerer Supreme, kind of a magic user in service of Baron Mordo, who is the Sorcerer Supreme in this alternate reality. We have Spider-Man teamed up this time with the Red Cat. It's Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, who's now in this universe, her version of Black Cat. They are together, and the two of them are basically trying to figure out what's going on. Spider-Man's the only one that feels displaced. That is until he runs into his own universe's Doctor Strange. From that point, it's Doctor Strange and Peter Parker jumping through this weird universe and trying to restore order and ultimately take down Hobgoblin. We have a lot of other twists and turns after that, which I enjoyed. There's a lot of other miniseries, like I said. We have the King in Black one, we have Crossroads. These ones have to do, in the case of King in Black, it's basically a story that's still set kind of back in the day, but this time we have Kang the Conqueror coming back and trying to absorb the powers of the Watcher, Uatu, and in so doing, anyway, you kind of figure out that eventually they're aware that Null is going to come and possibly destroy the world, or maybe the universe as they know it, so they're both trying to devise a way to stop that from happening. Spider-Man gets looped in here, and we have just sort of really interesting hijinks after that point. Really fun inclusions in this miniseries. We had the Black Knight, we had Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, which was fun. Again, a lot of these two-period characters that I think were utilized really effectively here. I also thought the King in Black miniseries was a really fun way to wrap in Null, but still be a period piece Spider-Man story. It almost feels like a weird prequel to the King in Black, which I did like. The Symbiote Spider-Man Crossroads has Spider-Man, again, kind of going through a multiverse kind of space. He goes along with Hulk, and they're trying to fight, I believe, an Asgardian villain. A lot of kind of high magic stuff going on in this one as well. Black Cat teams up with Doctor Strange to try to find Spider-Man, who's been kind of lost through all of these dimensions. Again, another kind of fun one here. I think the last story bit we have is the Symbiote Spider-Man 2099, and while I did have high hopes, especially as I am a fan of Spider-Man 2099 and what Peter David did with that character, but I don't know if I missed Rick Leonardi or what happened here, but I think overall the Symbiote Spider-Man 2099 series for me just didn't quite ring as true. It was fun to see Peter David at the helm of another 2099 story, but I don't know, it just kind of lacked something for me. It had a Spider-Man versus Venom story. We got to see Miguel O'Hara's Spider-Man 2099 get Venomized for a lot of this. We have some brother interactions, some tragic, some illuminating, but overall, again, the payoff there just wasn't quite for me. Maybe I need to finish up all of the Spider-Man 2099 run to get the fullness or the impact of what the story is supposed to bring. And we actually even have that story ending on a bit of a cliffhanger. But that is the end of the story portion of the Omnibus. And while I did enjoy it, like I said, I think it ended on the weakest note, which was a bit of a bummer. In fact, I would say overall, my favorite was probably the Spider-Man vs. Mysterio story in the original Symbiote Spider-Man miniseries. Because of that, this Omnibus almost had a feeling of diminishing returns to me. I think that all of the miniseries were still very, very good, with the possible exception of that 2099 one, although I did like it just to be back in that world and sandbox again. But I think overall, by the end, I kind of lost some of the luster. I think it was very fun to see a lot of these characters, both heroes and villains, show up. I liked that the whole work felt like a period piece, harkening back to, again, the late 80s, early 90s Spider-Man. I loved the black suit. I loved having more of Black Cat involved. I thought that was really great. The characters that Peter David chose to bring in here I thought were fantastic. And the art from Greg Land. I know he's a controversial comic book artist sometimes, but overall I really liked what he did. I thought the character models were quite good. The action scenes were great. And anytime everyone was in their costumes, it was of particular note for me. I thought that the art was really strong in this one personally, and that was a huge selling point as well. I should say, to be fair, the Symbiote Spider-Man 2099 miniseries, while it wasn't quite my flavor, I did love some of the character models. Like, I think the Venomized Symbiote 2099 Spider-Man, in particular, was kind of hulking and interesting looking. I liked how his costume adapted to the symbiote in some interesting ways. I liked how Miguel O'Hara was influenced by the symbiote, and to see how that character in particular navigated that. I thought that this also really stood out from the rest of the book, because obviously we're not following Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and because of that, it felt in some ways freshest. Again, it just didn't quite click for me, but I still thought it was a novel idea. I was happy to be back in the world of Peter David's 2099, and it was still fun. But like I said, it was probably the weakest of the book for me, and I wish we could have had one more miniseries to perhaps end the whole run on a high note. Again, just for me personally, but overall, it didn't sour me on the whole collection. I thought this book was a blast. And to have a book that wasn't necessarily an ongoing sequential run, but rather a collection of miniseries, you did get this feeling that you kind of refresh every couple issues, and I did like that. It kept me from being too bogged down with this read. It didn't feel tedious at all. It was very breezy, a very quick read, because by the time you got into the story, you were done with one miniseries and you were ready for the next one, and the book really just read along quite well. I will say, once we get to the extras in this omnibus, I was a little let down. We did have some variant cover art galleries, which I liked, but I was unhappy to see that they're kind of thumbnailized. We didn't have the full page variant covers displayed, and I think with such a small omnibus, I was hoping to see a lot more variant covers in a full art presentation. I think that this book could have benefited from that as well. We did get some sketches and behind the scenes art, which I did enjoy quite a bit. I would have loved to see something from Peter David before he sadly passed in this book, but I was still happy with that introduction from Ralph Macchio and the extras we still did get at the back of this book. Was the Symbiote Spider-Man Omnibus my favorite Spider-Man Omnibus of the year? Well, no. Am I happy I took a chance on it, though? Absolutely. Before picking up this Omnibus, I only had a chance to read the first Symbiote Spider-Man miniseries, so I was delighted to finally read the rest of them. I'm really happy I didn't pick up the rest of the trades in favor of just getting a big, oversized hardcover book, and overall, I really had fun with my time here. It was a great way to also read another great Peter David set of comics. Overall, again, some really great moments and some that fell a little flatter, but this was just a couple of my thoughts on Symbiote Spider-Man from Marvel Comics. And now, the grade. for an incredible premise with a pretty solid execution. The Comic Book Report is happy to give the Symbiote Spider-Man Omnibus by Peter David and Greg Land from Marvel Comics a B. I would still overall consider this an above average read, and while some of these miniseries did land more for me than others, I still had a very fun ride throughout. A light and breezy read that really harkens back to such a critical time in Peter Parker's history. I really did enjoy this. The appearances of characters from this period that were more predominant in the life of Peter Parker was particularly novel and fun for me. Shout out to Black Cat, of course. And overall, it was just really fun to play in Peter David's world yet again. I'd be curious in the comments section, how many of you have read the Symbiote Spider-Man miniseries? Did you pick up this omnibus? Do you plan to? Now that you've seen my review, do you have any more thoughts on this release? I'd love to hear all of that and more in the comments section. And thank you all so much for watching. This was a fun one to go through and a fun one to review. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Every little bit helps. Thanks everyone. Bye.